Hello, my name is Emmanuel Chindev, and today I'm going to be talking about discovering yourself through education. Discovering yourself through education. Well, what am I talking about? Well, discovering yourself is identifying your value, identifying your abilities, identifying your calling, or identifying your purpose. Most people, they spend most of their life without identifying who they are or discovering who they are. And therefore, I'm just going to talk to you about one of the ways in which you can identify who you are or how valuable you are through the system of education. Well, we'll start off by looking at the education systems. There's two education systems that I'm going to talk about in this first part. I'm going to talk about mainstream academic education, and I'm going to talk about self-education. So, mainstream academic education, this is the education that is set up. There is a structure, and it will be in a school. It could be at college, it could be at university, and it will have instructors or teachers that facilitate this particular education. You get qualifications from this mainstream academic education system. Examples that we have of academic education systems, we have got preschools, which are in other countries called nursery school. You can call it kindergarten, or you can call it a creche, depending on which part of the world you are. This prepares you for primary school, where you start your preliminary, where your actual education, your actual schooling. And you go to primary school and you spend some years in primary school with your teachers that teach you the sort of basic level education, where you learn to write, where you learn to read, where you learn to count, where you learn to sing rhyming songs. And after spending some years, you then move on to your secondary education, or you then move on to high school, where you now have specialized subjects or particular subjects that you'll get to study, and you will have, in some cases, you will have different teachers that teach specific subjects. And you can also, in other countries, they've got what you call academies, college, university. So academies, for example, in the United Kingdom, it can be a combination of both a primary school and a secondary or a high school. And the difference between, you probably think, why am I saying secondary and high school? Well, how it is in, for example, the United Kingdom, where I've actually taught, is the secondary school does not have advanced level. A secondary school is, you probably spend like 4 years. You get to the GCSE level or the ordinary level. Then if you want to do your A level, you then go to a high school. So that's the sort of difference between the two, a high school and the secondary school. A high school will have from the first year of your high school towards to the point where you actually get to your A levels. Your A levels determine whether you will go to university and what you'll study at university. Whereas a secondary school, you get to the GCSE level, which determines whether you're going to go to a high school, or whether you're going to go to a college to learn about a technical trade. So that's just how the education system is set up. For example, in the United Kingdom, in some of the European countries. I'm going to now go on to talk about self-education, and this self-education is when you actually develop, when you actually learn by yourself, or you've got people that actually mentor you on certain things, but it's outside of the school environment. So an example of self-education is homeschooling. Homeschooling is popular in Finland, where I am at the moment. It is where the children do not actually go to a physical school, but they learn while they're at home. So they get to learn the same subjects. It could be from primary level, it could be high school level stuff, or secondary level stuff that you get to learn at home. And there'll be the support of your guardian or your parents. So they'll receive the actual, let me say, the curriculum of what other students are learning within the actual mainstream school. But since you're at home, they'll send you the curriculum, the recommendation, they'll recommend the books that you'll be using for those particular studies. Then you have got the long distance learning, or learning through correspondence. So let's say you've been homeschooling until you got to your high school level. And also, mind you, when you're doing your homeschooling, you can go and do exams like other students. If you pass well, if you do very well, you can actually go further studies, go to university, or you can actually do long distance learning. So for example, in the United Kingdom, we've got the Open University, and this is a university where you are not in class as such, you're not in lectures, but they send you all the materials so that you can actually learn. You can actually learn online using the internet, or the different modules that you need to learn. And you can also, if you need any help, they can organize tutorials where you can have a telephone conversation with a tutor while you're actually learning the different programs that you're actually doing. So this is learning in a different environment. That's the difference. Additional examples are, in self-education, you've got seminars, you have got self-studying or self-training. You can learn from others, you can learn from the media. So the idea behind all of these different examples I've mentioned is that you are actually taking in information, and that information is something that you will use to actually add value to yourself. In some cases, some people have got mentors, so they learn from people who have already gone through certain experiences, or who are good at doing certain things, and by learning from them, they actually gain the practical experience of what they're doing. And a good example is, a few weeks ago I went to a particular museum in Finland, and basically it was explained to me that years ago, experts in let's say shoemaking, or experts in carpentry, they didn't have schools as such. So they kind of invented, came up with ideas of how to make tables, how to make chairs. And so if you wanted to learn, because there were no schools to teach people those days, so you would go to these people and you would spend time with them learning practically how to make chairs and beds. So this is just an example of how some people actually get to learn. And outside of school, although you are in mainstream school, you could be in mainstream education, or you could be in high school or university. There's also, you can still take self-education, where you spend time reading books, going to the library, attending seminars, and meeting. At these seminars you can meet people who come from different professions, and they actually will be sharing this sort of like knowledge and research and experiences. Some of the seminars are free, some of the seminars you can actually pay for those particular seminars. So this gives people the opportunity, even if you're not an expert in that particular field, you can attend some of these seminars, because what it is you want to gain more information and updated knowledge. That's the beauty of seminars. Some seminars might be restrictive in that they will be maybe you might have to pay, or they'll be specifically for particular professionals. But some seminars, they're quite open. So that is an opportunity for people to actually gain self-education. So it's very important to to realize that you can also get to learn through self-education, which is becoming more and more sort of like recognized and common in today's sort of like world. So as students, you can improve yourself. You can you go to school, continue going to school, go and learn in school. But even outside of school, start practicing self-education, where you start using, books, looking into things which you're learning in school, or you can actually start look at something of interest that you might want to become in the future, and start researching, reading about those things, having interest, around those particular things that you might not be taught in school. You can start learning them outside of school, and that can actually help you to shape who you want to become in the future. So these are examples of the different education systems. Lastly, before I get to finish this particular episode, these particular different education systems are funded in various ways. Mainstream education tends to be funded either by state or by the state funding or government funding. Sometimes in some situations, scholarships, students can apply for scholarships. At times, some students actually get non-governmental organizations that can fund for their studies, or it could be that there is private funding, so from parents, from guardians, or from other family members can fund their studies. In some cases, like foreigners that live in other countries, and they self-fund their studies. So what they do, they actually work, and they also go to university or they go to college. So they actually fund themselves on those particular studies. Or some people save money. They work, they save money. Then later on, when they have enough money, they put that money towards study. So in our next episode, we are going to talk about some theories of education which impact on how we identify or gain knowledge of who we are. So watch out for this particular video, which will be coming shortly, and we will talk about the two different theories of education under the same subject we've been talking about, of discovering yourself through education. Well, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in part 2 of the same topic.